I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table from APM. A few years ago, my life changed when I became the host of this show. And I have been so thankful to you, our listeners, for making me feel welcome. And I couldn't be more thankful to our founding host, too. Lynne Rossetto Kasper not only started the Splendid Table 25 years ago, but she made me, and I was just a fan of the show, right? But she made me feel like I should be the one to take it over from her. And, her life changed too. We've checked in with each other a bit over the years, and I've gotten to hear what her passions have been in retirement. But as we've been doing shows, answering listeners' cooking questions, so many of you have called in to ask, hey, how's Lynne been doing? How's she hanging in through all this? That we asked her to join us for the hour. We're going to just dive right in. Hey, Lynne.
Hey, Francis.
This is wild. I've been so looking forward to talking with you, and I wish we were catching up under more normal circumstances, but here we are. And I actually thought, instead of me starting this out, I figured I would start with a listener's question because I think she sums up what so many people want to know right now.
Hi, I'm calling in with a question from Lynne. We miss you so much, Lynne. I'm just wondering, what has been keeping you busy in your retirement? Have you learned any new fun cooking skills? Have you taken on any cool projects that you can enlighten us with? I hope you're enjoying yourself and taking care of yourself, and we miss you. Bye-bye.
Oh, that's nice. That's very
I have to tell you,
sweet.
we got so many calls like that, that it just felt like I don't need to ask you this question because everyone wants to ask it themselves. So how have you been doing? What have you been doing in the past 4 years, actually, right?
Yeah, it's just about 4 years. Oh boy, what have I been doing? Well, first of all, I've been in the beginning, especially big adjustment. The show was 22 years, and all of a sudden I was a listener. And enjoying it, by the way, I have to say.
Well,
But
thank you.
one of the things that I wanted to do, we talk about life number 1, life number 2, life number 3. And I wanted to get back to things I left behind a long time ago in the names of making a living and then falling really in love with this, huge subject called food and marriage and so many other things. And that was, when I was in school, art and theater, they were my passions. And I wanted to get back to working with my hands, trying things with my hands. And I've discovered something very exciting. I discovered a form of Japanese weaving called sayori. And I've been doing quite a bit of this. The only thing is, it's difficult to have a loom in your home, but I work with a wonderful teacher, and it's a very unusual way of weaving. So this I love, and it's teaching me a lot about colors and textures. I never realized I love wild colors. But anyway, that time for friends, new friends, old friends. I've been collecting folk art, some bizarre things. I don't know that many people would call them art, but I do. I've got, I sort of stepped back from cooking for a couple of years. I cooked, but
Really?
I figured out I was in the profession for 50 years, and I was cooking nonstop through most of that. And I think it was pretty logical that I'd step back. And now it's coming back. The isolation has a lot to do with it, I think. The
Really?
focus is there, yeah. And I just started Tai Chi, which is so relaxing. A local teacher
great.
just started doing Tai Chi on Zoom. And it's a wonderful thing that he's doing, too. He's saying, sign up, it's free, just please make a contribution, and it's for several food banks locally. But
That's lovely.
I'm enjoying myself, and at times it gets lonely, especially now, with the isolation. I find myself a bit jealous of those of you who have people around you, whether it's significant others or children or roommates or whatever it might be. And I realize that it's not all beer and Skittles, that there could be a bit of, tension now and then. But I really miss my husband, and I miss him constantly anyway. But I keep thinking of what it would be like to go through this with him, and the sense of humor. And even the way we fought would be welcomed at this time.
Sure.
So what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of cooking, and I'm starting to share things with friends. People who don't cook, people who can't cook. I may be actually starting a chicken broth truck. I'm producing I'm producing great amounts of mother's broth, which is this sort of 20-hour broth that I make. And the freezer is now full. It's time to spread out the goodies. So that's what I'm doing. And like a lot of other people, I try to limit the amount of news I watch, but
Sure.
I have to watch. And you worry a lot. I think it's a time when keeping yourself level, kind of just even-toned is very difficult. And one of the things I've realized is I thank God because I have got friends with some of the wackiest senses of humor. What a relief. There's at least a laugh a day, generally more than that. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I miss you guys. That's the other thing.
I mean, we miss you. I mean, I probably miss you in a different way than the rest of the team does. Well, I wouldn't be here if you were still working, so thank you for that.
Yeah, but I think you're doing a great job, and I really like listening to you. And I have to confess one thing, that every time I hear the show and I listen to you and I'm smiling to myself, but I'm also thinking, gee, he's doing those 18-page scripts, and I'm free as a bird right now.
Well, I do envy you that sometimes. No, this is great. I would never want to do anything else. But, really, I do love feeling like I get to have this conversation with our listeners. And
Yeah.
that's a great segue into some of our listener calls. We got so many questions for you.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Like I said, people
I'm
who
ready.
want to know just how you're doing and making sure you're okay.
That's so
But lots
nice.
of questions from people who, it sounds like, are really getting into big cooking projects right now, like wanting to sort of find a new avenue for their creativity if they're at home, or getting beyond the stress of day-to-day cooking and just finding a way to sort of get into it. So maybe we'll start.
Yeah.
Let's start with one that I am
When you
so
laugh
excited
like
to
that, I
hear.
get very nervous, Francis.
It's not an evil laugh, I swear.
Okay, I'm ready. I'll take
You
on
are old
anything.
hat at this. You did this for 25 years. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine taking Nikki from Portland's question.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Nikki. I have 2 number 10 cans, one of tomatoes and one of bell peppers, red roasted bell
great.
peppers. I got them for a steal, but, I have no idea what to do with them other than tomato soup and pasta sauce. So if you could help me out, figure out something to do with these 2 cans. I'd really like to break into them. I need them, but since they're so huge, I'm not sure what else to do.
So for people who don't know, a number 10 can is an industrial restaurant size can, and it comes out to about just under a gallon of each. So she has 7 pounds of tomatoes in a can and 7 pounds of roasted bell peppers. So Lynn, what are you going to do with 14 pounds of tomatoes and bell peppers?
Okay, with the peppers, you can make a lot of romesco. And, and
Like 3 gallons of romesco?
well, no. I'm just saying let's start with romesco. Maybe
Okay,
a quart, and you can freeze part of it. But romesco is a sauce from Spain, and it's a puree of the roasted peppers, and there's garlic, and there's sherry vinegar, and there's some breadcrumbs, and ground almonds.
For body.
Yeah, for body. And it's a fabulous sauce. And you can put it on anything. You know what I love it on, believe it or not? Boiled potatoes.
That
Or
sounds great.
sweet potatoes. They're great. But any vegetable can take it. And I love things like a hamburger. And you just put romesco over it, and suddenly it is such a classy thing. But it's that kind of
Hot
idea
dogs with romesco.
You've got it. That's one thing you can do. The other thing that you can do is do some simple condiments that you can stick in the fridge. Like brown up some onions, throw in a lot of garlic, some chili pepper, and then equal parts of the peppers and the tomatoes. and some raisins and simmer that down. And then either you can
Raisins.
freeze that. One of the things I love doing is take a Ziploc bag and you freeze whatever you're doing, the romesco or whatever else it is. You put it on a baking sheet or in a pan or whatever. But the idea is that you freeze it flat. So then you can put it in your freezer like you're filing a folder. And you can break off pieces of these sauces and drop them into anything. You know, you're making scrambled eggs. Well, start by just sautéing that condiment I talked about or the romesco. And then scramble in the eggs. Or toss it with rice or pasta. With the tomatoes, well, there's never been enough tomatoes in the world as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. A mere gallon of tomatoes, it's
Child's
nothing.
play.
Absolutely. A mere bagatelle, as we would say. I think one of the things to consider is that now you have the makings of any stew you want to make, any braise that you want to make. Because if you freeze this in small quantities and then think about, you're roasting some vegetables, add a little bit of that tomato to it, just a bit, because you're roasting. You don't want to drown it in tomatoes. But add a bit of tomato, some orange zest, and some orange slices, and maybe some olives. Throw that in with roasting vegetables. It's absolutely fabulous. You can make tomato soup, but you can also do things like, poach fish in this. It would be delicious. And not a lot, just a little bit, but that idea of using it the way you would use a broth. And I think that would work. But what do you think, Francis? What would you be doing with it?
No, I love that idea. I mean, my thought was similar to yours, and I thought about all the different condiments I could make, and it's sort of funny because it's sort of counterintuitive. You have a huge amount of this thing, and what I want to say is we'll make it into something that stretches even further.
Yeah.
You cook it down to a beautiful concentrate that you can, it becomes this like super tart, sweet umami thing that you can throw into other things, right? But I think, sure, take 2 cups of it, 4 cups of it, or whatever, and make a nice tomato soup and have that for a couple days. But you're going to get sick of looking at that same bucket of tomato soup if it's been sitting in your fridge for 10 days or whatever.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking, how can you transform it in a way where it, again, sort of counterintuitively lasts longer, but it lasts longer in that it adds a punch of flavor to other things you're going to make. And so it doesn't feel like you're constantly eating the same thing over and over again. So I was thinking along the lines you were.
I think that's a brilliant idea, the idea of making both of them into essences.
Yeah.
The idea of cooking them down, I think that would be so delicious. Yeah. And the umami element, that element that raises all other flavors, that's so true with these.
Yeah. The one tip I would also probably give to Nikki is don't open both at the same time.
No.
Work through the 10 can of tomatoes first, and then maybe you get to the bell peppers later, because then you're really looking at a lot of stuff you got to get rid of.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, if it weren't for what we're going through, she could just open a restaurant temporarily in her living room. And if she opens them both at the same time.
Takeaway only.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Nikki, you may have a business on your hands. But I hope this helped her.
We're talking with the one and only Lynne Rossetto Kasper. And we'll be back with more of your questions. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table from APM. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table. Hey, so we're spending this whole episode with one of my heroes, the founding host of the Splendid Table, Lynne Rossetto Kasper, catching up and taking your cooking questions. And if you have cooking questions, from something you don't know how to do to, hey, here's a bunch of stuff I don't know what to make with, just record a voice memo on your phone and email it to us, contact@splendidtable.org, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 1-800-537-5252. Now let's get back to your questions with Lynne. All right, so let's move on to Kurt.
So I know this may seem like a really simple, basic question, but when I make pasta, especially long pasta, but even shorter types of pasta that has goodies in it, what we call goodies, be it sausage or peppers or eggplant or whatever, the goodies seem to always be more at the bottom than mixed through the pasta. Are there any tricks or ways to kind of make the goodies more evenly distributed? Thanks so much.
Okay, Kurt, here's the thing. First of all, this happens to all of us. Goodies drop down. It's. I think it's just.
It is gravity.
It is gravity, exactly.
No one has yet figured out.
Without a doubt. But this is the thing. There may be two ways or one way you can improve the situation a bit. I'm not sure how you mix your sauce into your pasta, but ideally, if you add the pasta to the sauce while it's in the pot, you undercook the pasta a little bit, and then you toss it over heat until the sauce is starting to be absorbed into the pasta. And that way, between the starch that's on the pasta and the heat, it tends to penetrate, and the goodies might stay, a little bit more into the blend.
Yeah, they stick a little bit.
They stick a little bit, but there's a flip side to this too. One of the great dishes in Italy is Ragu Bolognese with Tagliatelle. And this is sort of the, how would you put it, the iconic dish of Bologna, which is where Ragu Bolognese is from. And essentially, the ragu was always a dish a poverty dish. It would be from the cow that died, and you'd have to make that meat, and nobody questioned what it died from. People did not eat
God
meat in
took
the
it.
old
It's fine.
days. Yeah, and the idea was that the beauty of Ragu Bolognese, because it was with the minced meat and broth and saute of vegetables and that kind of thing, was that it was two courses in one. Pasta is always a first course in Italy, and the idea was that the bits and pieces you're talking about, the nubbins, always went to the bottom of the bowl because it's natural, and you'd eat your pasta, and then your meat course was nibbling from the bottom of the bowl, all the little nubbins that were there. So essentially, you're experiencing a very, very traditional situation, and maybe you should just celebrate it. I always, it's funny, but it also points out about how the majority of a population in a country ate up until, golly, I don't know, maybe the 1960s or 1950s.
Sure, yeah.
So
yeah.
two courses in one, guys. What
there you
more
go.
could you ask?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Right on.
I can't wait for the next question. These are dynamite.
All right, let's do the next one then. And for that, who should we do? Let's do Lisa in Melbourne.
Hi, Lynn. This is Lisa from Melbourne, Australia. I am calling to ask what to do with so much parsley. I've been getting a lot of parsley with my community-supported agriculture basket, and I really don't know what to do with it. I've made a lot of pesto, and it's not actually my favorite, so I was wondering what creative solution you would have. I love you, and I missed you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, that's so nice. Melbourne, Australia. That's really great.
Yeah, right?
Okay, a lot of parsley. Well, I must say, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm going into an anchovy period right now. I dip in and out of my anchovy periods. I should confess.
Picasso.
You know what I found on Amazon? A 14-ounce can of anchovies.
That's a serious anchovy period you have
Yes, it's really
getting
serious.
into.
Yeah, well, one thing I'm doing with parsley, and I mix it up with other herbs, but it works beautifully with parsley, is I throw a clove of garlic or two into the food processor, and I squeeze lemon over it and let it sit for a few minutes because it dulls that sulfuric, how do you say that, Francis? The sulfur in the garlic, it dulls it. Okay, thank you.
The part that makes your mouth hot.
Yes, exactly. And then I add a lot of anchovies and a lot of parsley. And I puree it. And I'll do parsley stems. I'll do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then that it lasts about 2 or 3 days. It freezes wonderfully. My freezer is filled with condiments and odds and ends, and then you have to cook something. So, but anyway, the idea is that this is really a sensational thing to add to dishes. And it's
Like
also
to finish
great
them raw, or like to start cooking with them? Or?
Well, you can finish them, Or you can spread this over, for instance, fish or whatever, and roast it.
Oh, cool.
Or saute it, yeah. You can do deglaze with it the way you would with broth or wine in a pan. You know, if you've sauteed up some chops or you've done some onions, it's wonderful with sauteed onions.
That sounds great.
Delicious. And then you use that with a cracker or a piece of celery or whatever, and you just use it as a dip. And it's just fabulous. But we're talking a lot of parsley, so that's not using, and you're not going to want to eat the anchovies, forever. Oh, I forgot to mention, it's dynamite over pasta.
For
Just
sure.
wonderful. Yeah, in fact, I think I'm going to make it tonight. I'm getting hungry again. But I think one of the other things to think about are the dishes where parsley figures big time.
Yeah.
One of them is from the Middle East, tabbouleh, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you can make it with quinoa or bulgur wheat. And this is a dish where you have a ton of parsley that you've chopped. And you have bulgur wheat is wheat that's been steamed, and then it's rolled into little nuggets. And it just needs to be reconstituted. So you can simmer it for maybe 15 minutes if it's the larger pieces. And if it's the smaller pieces, you just throw hot water over them and let them expand a bit. So it's like dehydrated cooked wheat.
Yeah, it's almost like
And
a
you-
couscous, but
Yeah. And you could use couscous instead. And the other thing you can use, if you're gluten-free, is quinoa, which cooks in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the idea is you have a ton of parsley. So you have, let's say, three parts of parsley. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get it right. 3 parts of parsley to maybe 2 parts of tomato, a lot of chopped up scallion or red onion, and about 1 part of the wheat or the couscous. It is the most sensational salad, and you can make a whole meal out of it.
the dressing for tabbouleh too is
Oh, I forgot that.
it's
yeah,
just
yeah. Go
it's,
on.
it's really simple. Well, you would salt it, right, and then lemon juice and olive, and or is there more to it?
No, there isn't. You're right.
Yeah, lemon juice and
It's
olive
lemon
oil.
juice and olive oil. And if for those who love coriander, you could mix coriander and parsley too. But I'm remembering something when I studied in France. I studied charcuterie, and one of the things we did is we worked with ham, but you could do this with a piece of almost anything. Chop up the parsley with any herb that you really like, maybe some onion or shallot, and then a little olive oil. And when you're going to cook anything from a fillet of fish to maybe even a small roast, anything that you can make slits sideways so it almost looks like it's pre-sliced, and stuff that mixture into it.
Oh yeah.
And the parsley can be really, really delicious. And there's something else that's similar to this that is done in Italy. It's called Gremolata. And it goes on tops of stews. It goes on top of roasted meat. Traditionally, it's served with also buco. And this is grated lemon rind, a lot of chopped parsley, a lot of lemon, and a lot of garlic, and a little olive oil, and you mix that together. I sometimes just make up a batch, and I keep it in the refrigerator because, it's not bad. By the way, it's not bad on bread. I should know. And because I'm living alone, I don't have to worry about offending anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even as involved as a pesto, which she said she was making and wasn't a huge fan of. It's so fresh. Like the parsley, people think of parsley as being, oh, you just put parsley on a plate. It's not really there for flavor. But if you actually eat it, it's like it has such a beautiful, fresh, grassy, green flavor. It just makes everything feel and taste brighter. So
Doesn't it? It tastes like summer.
yeah, it's great. Hey, you mentioned charcuterie, and that makes me want to go to a question from Ryan in Washington, D.C.
Hi, Splendid Table. My wife and I just moved into our first house together, and during this shutdown telework period for the coronavirus, I've been thinking about trying to make my own sausage as a nice project to try to wait it out. I'd like some advice on that because, of course, I'd like to get a cookbook or something to kind of give me some some tips of the trade on that. But since all the libraries are closed and everything, I'm kind of at a loss. I'd love some tips on making my own sausage, like a salami or some kind of fresh sausage that I could hang from the rafters of my first ever basement that I'm living in here. Thanks. Bye.
I love that his thing is like, well, I've got rafters now. What do I do with my rafters?
I have, yeah, if you've lived in an apartment much of your life, a basement is a real thing. I mean, it's a luxury. It's really
I don't got
great.
one. I'd love some rafters. Give me some rafters. I'll really be living my best life once I have rafters.
Yeah.
No, but I love this question. I love his attitude. Like he's obviously we're all dealing with a lot right now, but if there are ways in which you could say, hey, let me take my situation and find a new opportunity to get something like a new passion or a new project that I could be excited about. And there's something about, I think this is why people have gotten so into baking bread right now. There's something so satisfying about setting a process into motion and then getting to check in on it. I know I feel that way whenever I bake bread. You're watching the dough proof, you're watching a dough rise, and it just feels like, hey, there's like something cool going on, and I had a little something to do with it, and I love to check in on it. It's probably not unlike raising children, to be honest. Only you eat the bread at the end. But I think that's a great kind of project to get into. So I love the fact that he wants to start on maybe like a simple charcuterie or salumi project and just check in on it. So what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's great, and one of the things about both what he wants to do and what you were saying about making bread, all food is alive, but the changes that happen when you make dried sausage and that kind of thing, it's fermentation, but it's life. It's something evolving. Literally, you'll eventually see it and taste it. And bread is exactly the same way. It's alive, and it's happened under your hands. I mean,
it's the coolest thing.
It is the coolest thing. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, you've made sausage, haven't you, Francis?
Never. Not like a dry cured sausage. No, never.
Well, this is my problem with what Ryan wants to do. If he's living in Washington, D.C., it's a very humid place.
Okay.
And one of the enemies of really, letting that dry cure happen is moisture.
Okay.
And I'm very leery of. I have never done it myself because I have a streak of food police in me. No, I mean, my stepfather he made it commercially. He made wonderful salumi, Italian, sausages and such that he dried. It was a commercial setup, but a small one. But the idea that you have to have pretty low humidity to make it safe. And if it isn't safe, this isn't a case of a stomach ache. I mean, it can get a lot worse. So I would suggest that Ryan tries making fresh sausage. Okay. The rafters are great because he can hang garlic from it. He can hang fresh herbs from it. As the season, as summer comes in, start the herb garden. And then if you want to dry your herbs, hang them from the rafters. I'm trying to think what else you can hang from the rafters. You can hang things from the rafters. Let's put it that way. But you can make fresh sausage. And it's usually pretty basic. To lean meat, you generally want, let's say, 2 parts of lean meat to 1 part something fatty. Or you want to use a piece that's already fatty, like pork shoulder is great because it has so much wonderful marbling and fat in it.
Yeah.
And you can grind any way you'd like. You can grind, of course, you can grind fine. But I want to recommend a book, and this is something you may be able to find information on online. Michael Ruhlman, working with a chef whose name I can't remember.
Oh, it's Brian Paulson. I think you're talking
It's
about
Brian
Charcuterie.
Paulson? Oh, yeah, great.
The book
Thank
Charcuterie?
You.
Yeah.
You
Brian
have
Paulson.
a memory. This is a good thing, I have to say. This is and the book is called Charcuterie, which is French, and then another book is called Salumi, Salumi, which in Italian is like saying charcuterie. It's all the ways you can cure and preserve meat. And both of those books have fabulous information. Because what you want to be careful of, you can season, etc., but what you want to be careful of with sausages is, if you're going to stuff casings, is to not allow any air pockets. So you really, really stuff them. And I used to just do the sausages, skip the casings because they were a royal pain, and I'd make patties. Well, they were.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you could wrap the sausages in cheesecloth or something like that. But I would just grind up meat, and I always added wine to it. So I would add maybe, let's say I had a pound of pork shoulder, and I would grind that up. I'd grind it up usually with garlic, with things like nutmeg, a little bit of cinnamon, maybe some shallots. Grind it in, ground. This is terrible. I haven't been speaking very much, you know.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
It's like riding a bike. It's like talking is like riding a bike. It's fine. You'll never forget it.
This is the problem with all of this isolation, guys. But anyway, you season this up with high seasoning, you know, more than you would normally use. So you can use sweet spices like nutmeg, allspice, or cinnamon, lots of black pepper. You can throw in garlic. You could add chilies if you wished. But the way you know you've got it the way you want it, oh, and salt, of course, is you take a bit of the mixture and you pan fry it. And you pan fry it until it's perfectly done all the way through, no pink, and then you taste it. And you know what you need to do, you know, more of. But I would do that, and then what I would do is you could shape it into a log if you wanted to, and then you can just roast it or put it in a saute pan and cook it to an internal temperature of about 150 to 160 degrees. I'd say 160 to be on the safe side. And you're done. But if you ever move to someplace very dry, then you can use the rafters.
But I love your suggestion of hanging other things up there. Herbs, garlic.
Yeah.
Make use of the rafters. We're spending the hour with Lynne Rossetto Kasper, and we'll be back in a minute to take more of your questions. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table from APM. We're spending this episode with our dear friend Lynne Rossetto Kasper, answering your cooking questions, and keep sending us those questions for future shows where they might be answered by Carla Lally Music, Andrea Wynn, and more. Record them as voice memos on your phone and email them to contact@splendidtable.org. All right, now let's get back to Lynne and your questions. Okay, well, since we're talking about drying, I want to go to Jenna, who's in your backyard. She's in Minneapolis.
Oh, she's right across the river.
I make fresh pasta with some frequency, and while it's pretty easy, it does take a little bit of work. So when I do it, I typically make, 3 or 4 times what I actually need that night, and then I freeze each serving between wax paper. And then when I cook that frozen fresh pasta, I just take it straight from the freezer into the boiling water. That process is fine. Maybe it's a little chewier than it would be truly fresh. It just takes up a lot of space in my freezer, and it's really not portable. So I'm wondering if I can dry it instead. I've never tried it before. It feels a little strange to have raw eggs just hanging out on the counter for a while. So I would love it if you could help me understand what that process is, and if that's something that I could do from home, or if that's really just a commercial process. Thanks for your help.
She has
Jenna,
a
do you
good
have any
point.
rafters?
Yeah, there you go. Yes, now you need rafters. Absolutely.
Go find our friend Ryan.
Maybe we could get them together. But this is the thing. People dry that egg pasta all the time. And I have to confess, it never occurred to me that something could be going wrong with the eggs.
I thought you were in a food police streak.
I know. Well, everybody has their Achilles heel. This is mine. Wood was the only one. But at any rate, I have to say, people dry that pasta all the time. One of the things about egg pasta is that it tends to be more fragile than the pasta that's made with very hard wheat flour and water. And it's usually because egg pasta is made with something very close to, if not actually, all-purpose flour. And all-purpose flour has less gluten and protein in it, and it tends to make a more fragile pasta, which is often why egg pastas are eaten fresh. But they're dried all the time. I mean, you can make the pasta tonight for 2 days from now, and you'll often see when it's a holiday time in families, you will have broomsticks, between laid over two chairs, and all other forms of something to hang on all over the house, and the pasta's made in a fair quantity, and then it's hung on all of these things. And then when it dries, it's very gently put into bags because it'll break.
Yeah.
So that's one way you can do it. And it's worked for a couple of centuries. And I've eaten a lot of dried egg pasta, not commercial, but homemade. Yeah. Francis, what do you think?
I'm no microbiologist, but I would say if she is nervous at all, to maybe start by drying something that's a pretty thin shape, right? If she does a tagliatelle, if she does, just because it'll dry faster. And so the thing with drying as a preservation method for food is that bacteria need water to survive, right? And even though there's eggs in it, eggs are susceptible to bacteria, but if the water evaporates out of it fast enough, there's nothing for the bacteria to sustain the bacteria. So a thin pasta is going to dry faster than if you were doing something really thick. If you were, I don't know, if she's like making cavatelli or one of these thicker shapes.
Yeah.
But a nice thin pasta will dry. I don't know, what would you say? Like probably like in an hour, you'll start to really notice it, and after half a day or whatever, it's definitely dried.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And this is a good point. And they're right about the water. And in very traditional egg pasta, well, I'm sorry, there's 4 million ways of doing egg pasta, but one of the ways it's done is with only egg, so there is no water at all.
Yeah, it's just the natural water in the egg, which will evaporate so quickly. Yeah.
In fact, one of the things people will refer to making so many eggs of pasta.
Oh, cool.
For everybody you're serving, you break usually the equivalent of a large egg into a pile of flour, and you gently work it in until you have a dough that feels right. There'll still be a lot of flour left over, and what you do is you put that through a sieve and you set it aside. You can use it again. But it's how much flour can be absorbed in an egg. So, if I were having you and your wife and several friends over, I'd do 8 eggs of pasta.
Oh, that's cool. And then, actually, let me ask you, once it's dried, how do you store it? Just put the dried pasta into Ziploc bags?
This is where the fragility is important. You have to put it in a box. So, and in fact, there used to be, I don't know if they're still doing, the Cipriani people in Venice, the fabulous hotel and restaurant and whatever, they used to market their own made pasta in the kitchen. It was an egg pasta, and it came between layers of parchment paper in a long box because it was that fragile. Mm-hmm. So put it in a box, put some paper between layers.
Terrific. Cool. I think we have time for one more cooking project question, and that is from Mike in Woodstock, Illinois.
Hi. I've been spending more time with my pantry recently and exploring vinegars that have gotten shuffled to the back. And I was wondering if I'm able to make my own red wine vinegar with a bottle of red wine and the mother from an apple cider vinegar.
I've never made my own vinegar. Have you?
I did. Yeah, I did. You can use that mother that you find in some bottles of apple cider vinegar.
It's like the gooey looking, almost like moldy
it's
looking
gelatinous
stuff
and gooey. It's really not attractive, but that doesn't matter. It can do magical things. But one of the things, and it doesn't matter if it's cider vinegar and then you add red wine to it or white wine to it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that the bacteria works, on all forms. But I wonder if doesn't make more sense to order an actual mother from. You can do it online and they're usually not expensive at all. But a mother that is a very strong one, because sometimes it works for me, and sometimes with a different bottle, where the mother is there, it doesn't work. And I think maybe the mother hasn't matured enough. This is the thing that has always puzzled me. Success one time and not success the other. But using a mother that a friend gave me, that they had been making vinegar from for years, that worked. That really worked.
Yeah.
And you just have to leave the container, the top of the container open so air can get to it.
Yeah, actually, can you run us through the general process of making a vinegar? So, okay, he has his bottle of red wine. He puts it into like a jar.
Yeah.
You just
And,
drop that
and you
mother
have the
in
mother
there
in
and
that jar, yeah.
just let it hang
And
out.
now I have to confess, it's been a very, very long time. But the idea, no, but it has. I've just not done it for a while. Anyway, it's a case where you have the mother. Make sure it's not a pasteurized wine. Very few wines are pasteurized these days. But from what I understand, a long time ago, a lot of jug wines were pasteurized. And I don't know if, I don't think it's still going on. But the idea is you would add the wine, make sure that the container is open to the air. So it would be ideally not a bottle, but something with a larger opening than that. And you wait. But it's going to take time for the process to happen. And I've found that sometimes it's about a month. But as I said, it's been a very long time. When we first started the show, there was someone that we used to check in with. He was the Vinegar Man. And he was in South Dakota or North Dakota. I can't remember which, but he was in one of the Dakotas. And this man was absolutely passionate about making vinegar. And he had collected all kinds of methods of making vinegar.
Oh, cool.
With fruit, with things like pineapple, and there's the method to use fresh grapes, and so on. And it was periodically we just find out what he was doing because it was so interesting. But that's the very basic idea. And no doubt you're going to get a flood of emails saying, she didn't tell you about blah, 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 whatever. But I'm telling you about the basic idea.
Yeah.
And I do know if you make wine by any chance, because I wouldn't be surprised if some people now are taking a shot at making wine, do not let that vinegar container get anywhere near your wine making.
Oh, because it'll want to jump.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why balsamic vinegar is made in attics, because down in the basement is where people are making their own homemade wine.
Oh, and you don't want the bacteria
you don't want
to kind of
those little
float from one
bacteria
to
to
the other.
float around. So
You have to socially distance your wine and your vinegar.
yes, exactly. Oh well, yeah. Everybody's
put a mask
dealing
on
with
it,
it,
some
isn't
gloves.
it? Yes. We shouldn't joke, but it is a good point.
I mean, what else can we do at this point? You gotta laugh at something.
I have a question. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know how you're shopping, and how
Oh.
you're managing, not going out very much, etc.
Well, how am I shopping? We have gotten to the point where we've kind of figured out a shopping list that works, where we can go get enough stuff to last about 2 weeks. And it took some time to figure that out, figure out how to maximize our fridge space, because we don't have a ton of fridge space. Some people have a chest freezer. We don't have that, da-da-da. So it's okay, what produce can we buy? Because really the big limiting factors are produce, milk, and to some degree bread, right?
Yeah.
And we have a baby and 2 younger kids and a bunch of coffee drinkers in our 2-family home right now. So we go through a lot of milk. So that's kind of one of our limiting factors. But then produce, how do you get produce that will last you 2 weeks and you're not feeling oh man, I'm tired of eating just starch. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of making sure we have cabbage, making sure we have root vegetables. And if we buy something like lettuces or things like that, coming home, washing them, drying them, doing the thing where you put them in a plastic bag, maybe with a wet paper towel, so the lettuce can last you a week or more. Things like that, taking care of your delicate things and eating the delicate things first and letting the the sort of tougher, hardier produce. Like, a head of cabbage can last in your fridge for like a month.
Nothing can go wrong with a head of cabbage, I think. And carrots, well, a lot of root vegetables are the same way. Hey, have you tried roasting turnips? You must have tried roasting turnips.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I just did them with this mixture I use on cut up butternut squash, where I do a little allspice and black pepper and cinnamon, and then some paprika and cumin and coriander ground. And,
on the turnips.
On the turnips and on the
cool.
on the squash, and a little brown sugar, and then I toss that and I roast them slow, like at 350. By gum, they are fabulous. Boy, were they good.
Oh, that sounds great.
Nothing will kill a turnip either. It'll last forever.
We had this turnip here that, was literally the size of my head. It was enormous. It was a novelty turnip. It was, I weighed, it was a 4-pound turnip. And I got it because I'm like, oh, we'll need that. And then I just stared at it for 4 weeks. When am I going to get to, when are we going to feel like we got to break into the 4-pound turnip? But I was so glad we had it.
What did you do with it?
Oh, God, I did like 6 things with it. I was like, we're going to eat 4 pounds of turnip at once. So peeled it, because when you have a turnip that size, you really want to, the skin is going to be pretty tough and maybe a little bit bitter. I think the first thing we did was peeled it, cubed, a pound of it, cubed it, and I had this grandiose plan for it. And what I ended up doing, using different fats and spices and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And all I ended up doing was just kind of slowly cooking it in some butter with some onions. And I was going to add stock and all this stuff to braise it down, but it actually had such a nice sweetness on its own that I was like, I'm just going to leave it be. And I added a little bit of water to the pan just to cook it through, and a lot of black pepper. So that was kind of it. It was like just had a little bit of crunch at the end of it.
Oh.
Didn't cook it all the way soft, but the turnip sweetness and the sweetness of the onions and some butter and black pepper and salt and just a little bit of water to help it cook. Oh, and a little bit of oregano, dried oregano flakes. And it was delicious. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So you can go Baroque with all the different spices, what you said, which was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Or it's sort of a nice time to rediscover just the natural taste of things too, and not have to use stock and not have to use whatever. Just a little bit of water to help cook through, and it was great.
You had me at the butter and the onions. Yeah. What a great idea. You know what? I am going to do that tonight because I've got turnips. Like you, I'm in root vegetable heaven here.
Yeah. That and your anchovy and parsley?
Yeah, well,
it'll be all right.
I could survive anything with all of that.
Well, Lynne, it has been terrific catching up with you, and I'm sure our listeners will be so psyched to hear you listening to their questions. I'm sure they've missed it for a few years now, so it's been great. I hope you're taking care of yourself.
I am taking care of myself and finding any way I can to, find pleasure in all of this, and it's great. It's great being on air with you. I can't tell you. Thanks a lot, Francis.
It's an honor. Take care.
You too.
For over 20 years, Lynne Rossetto Kasper was the host of the Splendid Table, and she's the author of the classic cookbook that gave this show its name. Well, that's it for us this week. We hope you enjoyed hearing from Lynne as much as we loved hanging out with her. I know she was super touched by all the questions and well wishes you had for her. Thank you for that. It was really a joy to see our hero feel so loved by you. Thanks so much for listening, for all the questions you keep sending in, and take care. Stay home if you can and stay safe. We'll talk to you next week. Our show is produced by APM, American Public Media, and supported by you. Thank you to everyone who's supporting their public radio station and their programming right now. We and they cannot do it without you, really. You can listen to all of our podcasts. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to get them. You can also subscribe to our weekly email, Weeknight Kitchen. We deliver recipes straight to your inbox every Wednesday to make your dinner time a little bit easier. Sign up at splendidtable.org. Our show is put together by our team, Jenny Lubke, Jennifer Russell, Erica Romero, Chip Walton, and Sally Swift. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is APM, American Public Media.